So what is the future of mobility actually looking like? And I was shortly considering and saying, well, yeah, that's actually a good question. Why not talk about the future of mobility? And probably we start by defining what is actually mobility, because I think mobility is one of the basic human needs. It's there since Stone Age. And if you really put it simple, it's like you as a customer, you want to get from A to B. You want to get it in the most convenient, most easy, or most personal way you could probably have. And this basic need is there since like Stone Age, and it will be there like in the future as well. The only question is, what is the perfect way of mobility? And I was considering for myself, like, you know, I flew to Taipei yesterday, and the most convenient way actually would have been for the future of mobility, just snap my fingers and say something like, beam me up, Scotty, and bring me to Taipei. Well, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. We've really got perfect engineers working on future mobility, but at this point of day, I really can't promise when this feature is actually ready. So I thought, okay, what is actually the future of mobility going to look like? And it all starts with a small little letter, or this little curve here. It's the so-called S-curve. I don't know who of you are aware of the S-curve paradigm. It's a really simple yet extremely powerful tool to really depict change. And the interesting thing about the S-curve paradigm is actually, you know, if you have something like an innovation, you already think there is something like a big bang, and it changes the world in like a snap. But the interesting thing is, the world actually doesn't work like this. Let me give you an example. Like, let's do something like, I would say, a trick. And just imagine we are not here in Taipei, we are somewhere else, and we are probably in the 18th century. And I'm standing here not as a BMW representative, but I'm like a representative of the major building of coaches. And you are my audience, and I'm asking you, dear audience, what is your wish for the future of mobility? What is your wish for the perfect next coach? Well, you know, I haven't been there at this time of the day, but my guesstimate would be, you probably would have answered, Alexander, please build me the most convenient, most comfortable luxury coach, and please build in something like 24 hours to increase the speed. Well, then something really interesting happened. You know, 1 year later, one guy in Germany invented a combustion engine. In retrospect, we all know this was the Big Bang. This was the game changer. And what do you think actually happened afterwards? Look at the time now. The interesting thing is, nothing happened. It took like 20 to 30 years, and this is like a paper clipping from a Washington, New York State newspaper. People didn't adapt. Like, the Big Bang was already there, but it did take a long time for really people to adapt. Right now, we know the automobile really changed everything. But it took actually like 40 to 50 years until the invention was made, that it went into mass production, and people are really adapting to change. So the S-curve paradigm tells us there is innovation, but sometimes it takes time, and really have to adapt to things to really make the world change. This is the one hand of the S-curve paradigm. But there's another view as well. The S-curve paradigm can be pretty quick as well. Just look at this example. This is 7 years ago. And 6 years after this was here published, that brand and a company didn't exist anymore, because they didn't foresaw like what change could actually look like. So the really important first takeaway of change is, you better know where you're standing in the S-curve, because it really has an impact on your business model, and it really changes how you feel. So I think we already heard, like in the first speech, the world is changing. So if you're talking about the changing in mobility, we'll all have to consider these changes. And I'm going a bit quicker to these facts because you already heard them. Megacities and urbanization is definitely something we have to take into account for future mobility concepts. Even if we try harder and harder, the CO2 emissions are still rising. And this is causing huge problems because air quality is the cornerstone of quality of life. And if you don't improve this kind of fact, we already have no chance for the future. And the third thing probably is something interesting. Did you know that you, on average, spend 4.3 years of your lifetime in a car? That's quite a lot, actually. And it's even worse. Like, you spend 3 months of the time, and the car is on a complete standstill, and you're not moving. Well, you might not say, OK, Alexander, 3 months doesn't sound that much. But if I'm now telling you that your total sexual activity over a lifetime is only 48 days, these 3 months really have a different impact. So this is the one thing. So the world around us is changing. But of course, the technology is changing as well. But actually, as Jason informed me, I think you're all aware of these technological changes that are going on. Like if you ask me, Alexander, will there be cars in the future? I would say, of course there will be cars of the future. Like tours are standing over there, and I'm reading always articles, and people ask me, don't you think the car will vanish in the future? And I always say, no, because mobility was always something highly emotional as well. If mobility was purely rational, all these premium car manufacturers wouldn't even exist to this day. So I don't think the car itself will vanish, because people really love to drive in cars. They love the really joy of acceleration, and they love the personality of the car. Some cars even become art. What we all don't like, actually, is being stuck in traffic jams. What we all don't like is looking for parking spots. What we all don't like is the noise and probably the pollution that cars cause. This has to go away. The second question actually is, will the future cars be driving electric and be more sustainable? And I always say, yeah, it's already available today, so of course this is the next big thing. It won't go away with a snap that we all use combustion engines. But at the end of my life, my guesstimate is that we're all driving electric or hydrogen or fuel cell-driven cars. The next big thing, definitely something like digitalization and connectivity. And if you ask me, like, Alexander, the next big thing in cars, don't you think like the car is connected to everyone and everything possible? And I say, well, definitely. Well, the car will be in the future connected to the traffic light, telling the traffic light when you're actually coming, and probably it's green when you're there, so there's no traffic jam. So the car might be connected to a vacant parking spot, so it guides you there and you don't have to look for it. It might even be connected to your fridge, so your car already knows that you have to go shopping, and it guides you to a grocery store while you're on your way home. But these are just all technologies, and I think most of you have already read about them in articles, so this is no news for you. So the question is, how does all that impact our lives? How does it change the way we think and act about future mobility? And this now, again, is really important for us as a car company. And the fact is, the world is changing, that is for sure, but we have to change as well. And a really interesting fact we have discovered, and I'm telling you right now, is the car industry, as we all know it, I think it's doomed, it will vanish. And this sounds now like a really bold statement for somebody working for a big car company. But the interesting thing is, do you consider change as a threat or as a chance? And we definitely consider it as a chance. And we say the automobile industry will vanish, but it will be replaced by something like an automobility industry. The emphasis on mobility and not longer on auto. And you might say now, okay, this is really theoretical with all these curves here, Alexander. Why don't you give us some examples? Let's do the same thing with the time warp again. But this time we don't go back in the 18th century. This time we go into a journey probably to 2030. And 2030 is not that far away. It's 15 years from now. Let's just probably think together, how would my journey from Munich, Bavaria to Taipei have been looking in the year 2030? Well, it all starts in the morning. My cell phone wakes me up, and I look at the clock, and I see, oh, wow, it's actually 10 minutes later than I set my alarm clock. Well, this is due to the fact that my cell phone is actually connected to my car. My car, therefore, knows my itinerary. It knows my plans to go to Taipei. It knows there is a flight scheduled. And it already calculated with real-time traffic information that there is no traffic jam today. So actually, I can sleep 10 minutes longer because I don't have to get up early. I really appreciate this. I enjoy my coffee. I grab my bags, and I leave my house. And then there comes something I really like most, and I call it the Lone Ranger feature. In the old Western movies, when you whistle and your horse comes running to you. Well, in the future, I don't even will have to whistle. My car is connected to my cell phone, so my cell phone realizes when I'm heading for the elevator, and it knows I need to go to the airport. So my car in the future won't be parked in front of my house, because we heard about the urbanization. There's so less places, there's so less space in the cities. So why actually park cars in the cities? It doesn't make any sense. Why don't we build something like high bay parking spaces outside of the city where all the cars are stacked most efficiently, and they're just driven autonomously into the city when you actually need them? Lone Ranger feature. So when I really actually leave my house, my car is already there, like my true trusted horse. I pack my bags in the car. The radio is already tuned to my favorite station. The navigation is already set for the airport because my car actually knows where I'm going. And I quickly think about, if I go for myself, but then I push the autonomous driving button? That's a really interesting question as well. You know, I'm working for BMW, and our brand core is sheer driving pleasure. And people always ask me, like, Alexander, autonomous driving, isn't that like the biggest threat for your company? And I say, no, it's not. It's one of the biggest chances, as long as you give really the people the chance to really decide what they actually want. You know, if I'm driving to the airport, it's like a road I've driven 3 million times actually in my life. Why should I do it 1 time more? At this day in the morning, I just say, let the car take over and go to the airport. Probably if I'm on a holiday and I have some nice winding road, I definitely want to drive this road alone, and this won't change in the future. You have to give the people the chance to really decide what they want to do with their car. So I'm going to the airport, everything is smooth. I arrive at the airport, and then I'm doing 2 really interesting things. The first one is I activate the so-called friends and family mode. I push a button, and with this simple button, I authorize my parents to use my car while I'm away. They just, use their thumbprint, and then they can use my car. They don't need a key. I do the same for my neighbor, because my neighbor is really nice, but actually the last time I gave him my car, he was speeding. So for him, I limited the driving profile, so he's not allowed to speed anymore. But the more important feature is actually the so-called sharing mode. So when I leave for TEIPei, I activate the sharing mode in my car. What does that mean? You know, if you consider public transport, and I really like buses and subways, don't get me wrong, but they have a few things I don't like. The first thing is they're running on time schedules. My life doesn't run on time schedules. The second thing is they're running every few minutes, even if nobody's sitting in them. The third is they actually never stop where I want to go. That is annoying. So why didn't you replace the public transport in cities by something like autonomous driving cars? Good idea, but the question is, where do these cars actually come from? Why a solution could be, while I'm away, why couldn't my personal car be part of an autonomously driven public transport fleet in my city? So actually, I'm giving the city the chance to use my car if they want it, and instead of parking my car in some unheard expensive car park at the airport, I actually could make money with my car. Again, this is an option, because there will, of course, be people in the future that say, this is my car, this is my personal space. I don't want to give it to somebody else. But just consider Airbnb. Like 10 years ago, if I suggested to you, you can rent your flat while you're away on holiday to some other people, would you have invested in such kind of a business mobility? Nobody would. Right now, it's like the biggest provider of really rented apartments. So the world is changing, and I think this sharing community thing is really going in the right direction. So the next thing is I take a flight, and I think there will be innovations in the flight industry as well, but just skip it at this moment. And I perfectly well land in Taipei. The next thing is I go out of the airport, but I don't take a taxi and I don't take something like public transport. But the same thing I just told you about the sharing economy, of course, applies to other cities as well. And they go to something like this sharing parking spot, and there will be e-bikes, the ones you're already having here in Taipei probably. Then you're having e-cars, and I just have to go to this car, and I can book one with just my fingerprint. Because in the future, buying mobility will be as easy like buying minutes on your cell phone. You just have one provider, one company, and this company will care about all your mobility needs. There won't be something like, I need a card here for the bike, I need something else for renting, I need something else for buying. No, why don't we have one company that cares about all your mobility needs, be it renting a bike, buying a plane ticket, or just taking a car for a few minutes. So I quickly think about taking the e-bike, but then I see my bags and say, okay, no, I better go for a car. But the weather is fine in Taipei, it's sunny, the air is crisp and clean because the pollution is not that bad anymore. And I go for a nice open roadster. I open up the roof, in just a moment I drive away, the car informs me that my girlfriend is calling. I accept the call with gesture control, and a live stream of my girlfriend is projected right in front of me into the windscreen, and I talk to my girlfriend. The car automatically goes into autonomous mode so that I'm not having to drive anymore. At the same time I'm driving, the car informs Jason from TEDx that I'm on my way from the airport. So he knows exactly where I am. He knows my expected arrival time. So when I'm actually at our meeting point, Jason just arrives as well, so nobody has to wait anymore. We say hello, grab a coffee, and the car is already off. It doesn't stand there even for a few seconds because I sent it to my hotel. And I already authorized the concierge there to open the car, to put up my luggage, bring it to my room. Well, this is just like a quick snapshot of what the future could look like. And what are the 3 key takeaways here in this message? The first one is, the future of mobility is a good thing. It's not a threat, it's a chance to us. Because it's easy, it's convenient, for you as customers, it will be a perfect thing. And that's what I'm sure people will adopt. The second news is, none of this is science fiction. These innovations are developed the moment I'm standing here. The engineers are working there, and you will experience these features within the next years. This is going to happen. This will become reality. You as consumers have a chance to experience all that. And this brings me to the third and probably the most important question. Are you ready to change? We have seen the S-curve. And I'm standing here and asking you, e-mobility is available as we speak. How many of you in the audience are actually using e-mobility? Car sharing is available as we speak. How many of you are actually using it today? So if we consider this S-curve and this future of the mobility a good thing, if we want to change the world in this way, and we think this is probably a step we should take, it's up to us to make the first step. It's up to us to be the pioneers and the forerunners for this future mobility vision. And the good thing about future mobility is quite simple. The key to the future of mobility is in our own hands. So I would say, let's grab it and go for a hell of a ride. And don't forget one thing. More of the same is never a good thing when it comes to innovation. 谢谢。